Okay, I sat down for an exclusive interview with Vice President-elect JD Vance yesterday, his first since leaving the Senate officially. And we started by talking about the new administration's plans for handling disasters like the ones in California and recovery in the Carolinas. Well, welcome back to Fox News Sunday now as Vice President-elect. Congratulations.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Okay, so I want to talk to you about the fire situation in California because your administration will be coming in, taking over the reins as the feds are trying to meet that along with many other emergency situations they have going on. Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, has written to President Trump saying, let's not be divisive right now. Come out and visit. Let people see us working together. Any indication the president-elect may do that?
Well, I know the president would love to visit California. And first of all, our hearts go out to everybody who's been affected by the storms. I've seen some of these videos of people where, folks have lived in those homes for 25, 30, 35 years and everything is gone. And whatever your political affiliation, it's hard not to see those images and just be heartbroken for our fellow Americans who are going through a very tough time. And I do think, frankly, the federal government has to do a better job. President Trump is committed to doing a better job when it comes to disaster relief. That's true for the hurricane victims and flood victims in North Carolina. It's true for the fire victims in California. We have to do a better job. We need competent, good governance. Now, that doesn't mean you can't criticize the governor of California for, I think, some very bad decisions over a very long period of time. I mean, some of these reservoirs have been dry for 15, 20 years. The fire hydrants are being reported as going dry while the firefighters are trying to put out these fires. There is a serious lack of competent governance in California, and I think it's part of the reason why these fires have gotten so bad. We need to do a better job at both the state and federal level.
So there are skeptics who worry about what the administration will do when it comes to handing out aid to California. They're citing back to something that the president-elect said in September when he said, we won't give him money to put out all his fires. And if we don't give him the money to put out his fires, he's got problems. Is there any consideration of withholding aid to Californians?
No, look, President Trump cares about all Americans, right? He is the president for all Americans. And I think that he intends to have FEMA and other federal responses much, much better and much more clued into what's going on there on the ground. President Biden has been asleep at the wheel for a number of different crises. And I think this final California fire, as it's really getting out of control in Biden's last week and a half, I do think it drives home just, again, we've had incompetent governance for so long. President Trump often says that the coalition that made him the president was just a common sense coalition. There were conservatives, there were moderates, there were even a few liberals. But the thing that united us is just this basic idea that, yes, government should be smaller, but when government does the things that it should do, it ought to do them well. And that's one of the things that President Trump and I are going to fight to get back to.
So President Biden is doing what he can on his way out the door on a number of issues, and critics would say some of those appear to be aimed at blunting what you all might have planned. Let's talk first about immigration. Politico has this headline: Biden extends temporary status of nearly 1 million migrants ahead of Trump deportations. It says the move allows people from certain countries who currently have temporary protected status, or TPS, to renew work permits and deportation protections, extending the program for El Salvador until March 2026 and Sudan, Ukraine, and Venezuela until October of 26. How does President Trump plan to handle these last-minute things, and what are his own executive actions planned, especially with regard to the border on day one?
Yeah, so Shannon, if you step back a little bit, I do think it's important to reiterate that not just on the border, but on a whole host of issues, President Biden has left us an absolute dumpster fire. Now, we're excited to get to work, but we need to be open and honest about the fact that President Biden has not left the next administration in a good place, right? FEMA's funds are depleted. We have a wide open southern border. Oil is going through the roof. Bond yields went from 4.1% to 4.8% in a month. And that's on top of the fact that President Biden has been running the largest peacetime deficits in the history of this country. So we've got a lot of debt, a lot of problems, and a wide open southern border. And thank God that Donald Trump takes office in a week and a half, because we need somebody to actually govern this country effectively. Now, on the border crisis in particular, the most important thing that we have to do is to send a message that America is closed to illegal immigration. For the past 4 years, we have been wide open, and you're going to see, I think, dozens of executive orders coming from the Trump administration, coming from us on day one, that send a message to Customs and Border Patrol: you guys guys are allowed to do your job again. And to illegal immigrants all over the world, you are not welcome into this country illegally. If you want to come through, you've got to come through proper channels.
What about the critics who are humanitarian activists and others who are worried about these deportations, saying families are going to be separated, people are going to be put in tents and in terrible conditions? They have real concerns about the way you plan to actually mete out those things you're planning to do.
Yeah, so this term is something you're going to hear a lot in the next couple of months, the next couple of years, Shannon. Family separation. I think it's important. That's a euphemism. That is a dishonest term to hide behind the fact that Joe Biden has not done border enforcement. If you say, for example, in the United States, we have a guy who's convicted of a violent crime and has to go to prison, we want that guy to go to prison. But yes, it does mean that that guy is going to be separated from his family. That is the consequence of committing violence upon your fellow citizens. If you come into this country illegally, you need to go back home. You need to have basic law enforcement. And what the Democrats are going to do is they're going to hide behind this. They're going to say that this is all about compassion for families. It is not compassion to allow the drug cartels to traffic small children. It is not compassionate to allow the worst people in the world to send minor children, some of them victims of sex trafficking, into our country. That is the real humanitarian crisis at the border. You're not going to exacerbate it through law enforcement. You're going to fix it through law enforcement, and that's what Donald Trump is going to do.
But fair to say those egregious things that you cite that I would think all Americans are against.
Sure.
That's a small fraction of the millions of people who are here, who have built lives. Many of them have been here for decades.
So you do have hundreds of thousands, maybe even 1 million people who, in addition to crossing into the border illegally, have also committed some measure of violent crime. So it's actually a very large number of people, Shannon. And the point is that if you want to fix the overall border crisis, you have to engage in law enforcement. We can't buy into this lie, really, from the extreme left, because I agree with you. Most Americans want common sense border enforcement. We can't buy into this lie that law enforcement at the American southern border is somehow not compassionate to families who want to cross illegally. Our number one responsibility is compassion to our fellow Americans, and that starts with enforcing the southern border. You cannot have a country of law and order, of stability, of basic good governance unless you get control of what Biden has left us at the American southern border, and President Trump is committed to doing it on day one.
You talk about what he's left on the border. He wants to talk about what he's left you on the economy. There was a robust report out of December on jobs. Unemployment down to 4.1%. President Biden says his policy decisions are finally paying off. Here's a bit of more he said on Friday.
Sure.
After decades of trickle-down economics that primarily benefited those at the very top, Kamala and I and our administration have written a new playbook that's growing the economy from the middle out and the bottom up that benefits everyone. The new playbook is working.
Okay, so the December numbers were good. What kind of credit do you give him?
Well, look, first of all, I wish Joe Biden all the best, but the fact is he has left us dumpster fire, not just at the border, but also with the economy. First of all, we know that prices are way too high for many Americans. We have to work every single day to stabilize prices for American families. But Shannon, everything that he's bragging about ignores the fact that he has added trillions and trillions of dollars to the federal debt during a time of peace. He has left us with bond yields, meaning how are we going to finance that debt? We have to sell Treasury bonds. And the Treasury bonds have gotten more expensive because of Joe Biden's policies. So you go issue after issue. Oil prices are now shooting through the roof in the final 2 months of Joe Biden's administration, in part because of decisions that Joe Biden has made over the last few weeks. He actually hasn't left the American people in good economic condition. That's why they made Donald J. Trump the president-elect of the United States. So we've got a lot of work to do. I remain fundamentally, and you know this, Shannon, I'll always be an optimist about our country, but I think that that optimism has to start with a bit of realism. And the real truth is that Joe Biden has left us a dumpster fire. Donald Trump is going to have to put it out, but he's good at doing that.
Okay, we're going to try to get through a lightning round so I can get to a few more things
Please.
with you. January 6th pardons, President Trump says there's a process. Where is the line drawn on who will and wouldn't be considered for a pardon?
I think it's very simple. Look, if you protested peacefully on January the 6th and you've had Merrick Garland's Department of Justice treat you like a gang member, you should be pardoned. If you committed violence on that day, obviously you shouldn't be pardoned. And there's a little bit of a gray area there, but we're very much committed to seeing the equal administration of law. And there are a lot of people we we think, in the wake of January the 6th who were prosecuted unfairly. We need to rectify that.
All right, the president has talked about the Middle East. You're going to inherit a situation in Gaza that's an ongoing conflict. There are, we think, roughly 100 hostages still in Hamas control. Here's what he said on Tuesday. Echoes what he's been saying.
If those hostages aren't back, I don't want to hurt your negotiation. If they're not back by the time I get into office, all hell will break out in the Middle East. Can you elaborate? And it will not be good for Hamas, and it will not be good, frankly, for anyone.
What does that mean practically? All hell's going to break loose. And any updates, Steve Witkoff back over in the region trying to negotiate a deal?
Yeah, so first of all, Steve Witkoff is a great guy. He's doing a great job over there. And I think the president, if you talk to world leaders, it's very clear that President Trump threatening Hamas and making it clear that there is going to be hell to pay is part of the reason why we've made progress on getting some hostages out. We're hopeful there's going to be a deal that's struck towards the very end of Biden's administration, maybe the last day or two. But regardless of when that deal is struck, it will be because people are terrified that there are going to be consequences for Hamas. Now, what does that look like? I think, number one, it means enabling the Israelis to knock out the final couple of battalions of Hamas and their leadership. It means very aggressive sanctions and financial penalties on those who are supporting terrorist organizations in the Middle East. It means actually doing the job of American leadership, which Donald Trump did very well for 4 years, and he's going to do very well for the next 4 years.
What's the deal with Greenland and the Panama Canal? Are we using or considering use of military force in any of those situations?
No, look, we don't have to use military force, Shannon. The thing that people always ignore is we already have troops in Greenland. Greenland is really important for America strategically. It has a lot of great natural resources. My friend Donald Trump Jr. was there a couple of days ago, and you know what they told him? They want to be empowered to develop. The people of Greenland want to be empowered to develop the resources there. We also need to make sure that Greenland is properly cared for from an American security perspective. And frankly, the current leadership, the Danish government, has not done a good enough job of securing Greenland. I think there actually is a real opportunity here for us to take leadership to protect America's security, to ensure that those incredible natural resources are developed. And that's what Donald Trump is good at. He's good at making deals, and I think there's a deal to be made in Greenland.
Okay, quickly, your Buckeyes made it into the national championship. It's the same day as the inauguration. You sparked a lot of backlash with your tweet that maybe you're going to skip the inauguration to go to the national championship. Is there some kind of executive power to move the game? What's the plan?
Trust me, I've asked. Apparently not. I assure you that was a joke. I will be there doing my constitutional duty and swearing in as the 50th Vice President of the United States. But, man, I really wish they could move the game until Tuesday. And so if you're watching this show and you have the power, I'd really like to watch the Buckeyes, and I don't want to be at the inaugural ball like staring at my phone because we're watching Ohio State versus Notre Dame. So let's move that game. But if not, I'll be rooting for the Buckeyes in spirit.
I feel like we're going to get that shot of you at the balls. Mr. Vice President-elect, thank you always for coming by.
Thank you. Good to see you.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.